Welcome to SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. I'm your host, Susie St. Angelo, and thank you for being here. Today's episode is called The Enemy Within, How to Win the Battle Against Inner Resistance. And today I'll be talking to Kam Knight, a best-selling author, speaker, and coach. He's known for bringing fresh solutions and insight that are a rare departure from traditional ideas. He's written over 12 books. He's traveled to over 100 countries. It was a fascinating conversation, and I know you want to stay and listen to the entire episode. He gives some great tips to all of us to do. So I hope that you'll get something useful out of this conversation. This podcast is for you if you know you want to change something. Maybe it's your career, your health, or something else. And you might wonder if this is the right age or stage to do it, and you don't know how to start. Well, you've come to the right place. Or maybe you're one of those people caught in analysis paralysis. I see, I understand, I used to feel the same way. Just keep listening. You'll get a tidbit or two in every episode. And just a reminder, you can find this podcast on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeart, and YouTube. And remember to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's get into today's episode and meet my guest, Kam Knight. Hi, Kam. Welcome to SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life.
Hi, Susie. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm excited to have you too. I think this will be a fascinating conversation and one many people will want to tune into and find out more about. So we'll just get started. And so tell me a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to get involved in internal resistance and some of the other things you do.
Okay, cool. So my name is Kam Knight. I am a coach, international speaker, and best-selling author of a dozen books in the area of mental performance, as well as physical and emotional performance. And as far back as I can remember, I've been a fairly driven individual. It's kind of hard not to be living in this culture where there's just so much personal development content and everyone telling you to do more and be your best self and reach for the stars. And it didn't help that I had parents who were very pushing for me to be extremely successful. And although I've had my fair share of success, I always felt like I fell short, or the success was much more stressful than it needed to be. And I always wondered why that was. Why is it if I want to do something, I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I have the motivation and desire to do it, but for one reason or another, I can't or don't do it. And at the time, there were no clear answers. The best answers I heard was you need beliefs, or you need to have motivation and discipline and things of that nature. And don't get me wrong, those things are all key and part of the equation, but I always thought there was more to that equation. And over the last 15 to 20 years, that question lingered in my mind. Every time I felt stuck, I wondered why. Why can't I get stuff done? Why do I keep spinning my wheels? Why don't I just do this dang thing so I can get the result that I want? And the more books I read, coaching I did, and seminars I attended, the more I learned about the complexities of the brain. And over, there was a running theme that I kept hearing, which was, this is the reason for your blocks, or this is what can hold you back, or be careful of things or that. And over time, my brain started to come to the idea that, hey, wait a minute, our mind is built to hold us back. There's a part of our brain that is designed to keep us from growing and making progress. And I call this part resistance. And the way that I describe it is that it's this brick wall that we hit anytime that we want to do something, but we can't, no matter how much we want to do it.
Yes. And I would say too, sometimes that wall that holds us back is just there temporarily to let us reassess, regroup, and and there's fear holding us back. So the combination of all those to me.
Well, it's really interesting because when I do talk about resistance, one of the things that comes up a lot is it fear? And what I like to help people understand is fear is a manifestation of the resistance. So resistance uses fear to keep us from doing something or making progress slow. And so if we experience fear, it's not the fear that's holding us back. There's something else going on underneath that is triggering the fear. So that's really important to understand.
So you started writing all these books, and I'm sure it was based, I would assume, on your research and examples. And did you have personal experience?
It was a lot more personal experience than anything else. So, growing up, I also had a lot of mental and emotional challenges. My mind raced all over the place. As soon as I had one thought, my mind would jump to another and another and another. And before I knew it, I was all over the place. And also, my emotions cycled intensely. One minute I'm feeling one way, and another minute I'm feeling another way. And so when a person has this going on internally, it's really hard to take personal development advice. Like, we all know what we need to do with the motivation and the discipline and setting schedules and notes and all of that. But when there's this inner activity, or at least for me, it was inner mayhem, advice wasn't that helpful. And so I had to figure out other ways to understand what was going on. And so it was in my journey of, I guess, healing. Plus, as I've also traveled to over 100 countries around the world. And I didn't just travel to touristic destinations like the Eiffel Tower or Big Ben. I did that too. But most people who followed my journey at the time were like, wow, Cam, you really leave no stone unturned. And I've been to some of the most isolated places in the world. I've interacted with indigenous tribes on all continents, whether the Kuna in Panama, Inuits in Greenland, Maasai in Africa, Aboriginals in Australia, as well as in Asia. And so I really got the gambit of experience of the human condition. And although my topics are fairly logical, like memory, speed reading, concentration, I weave a lot of what I have learned from my experiences into that. And I think that's kind of what gives it the success it has, because in many ways, I'm trying to help people connect to the human experience that we have been disconnected from.
Well, I think a lot of people can relate to that active mind, though. And for years, I don't think, going back to my childhood, I'm sure there were a lot of us who had active minds that raced or that couldn't quiet down at night. It was not a diagnosis or anything like that. We just were that way, But as we've gotten older, there's obviously labels and things like that people experience, and maybe people don't get any help, and they say, well, that's just the way I am, and that's just I just am wired differently. So I think people can certainly relate to what you experienced as a child and a young adult.
Yeah, I think now more than ever. And when I really got down to it, so I do want to say the thing about people just think it's the way they are. And it's really interesting, the way our thoughts work and our feelings, come up. It seems like it's the real thing. It seems like because we're thinking them and we're feeling things, that's the reality of the situation. And we just assume that is the way we are. And it really helps if a person can understand that almost all of their thoughts and even the feelings that are coming up, they're not choosing to feel it. It's triggered from the unconscious mind. And if they can understand that, they can understand that that can be changed and that it's not really them and it can be improved. And when I went on my journey of working through what was going on internally for me, I really found that there were a few main things that are causing it. And I think it's a big contributor to most people. One is diet. There's just a lot more chemicals in foods right now, and they are triggering and stimulating this inner activity in us. It's triggering various emotions. It's making our thoughts race and things like that. And I went on a long journey to really understand that, the extent of how much diet affects us and how far I've gone to understand what is really good and healthy. Because unfortunately, we're living in a time where companies are realizing people are becoming more conscious about what they consume. And so they're getting ever more sly and deceptive in making things seem healthy when they're not. Yeah. The other big thing is media. For many reasons, there's a lot of violence, and it creates a lot of, what's the word, unreasonable expectations of how the world works. But more importantly, the scenes on most of the content we watch change very rapidly. So back in the 50s and 60s, if you watched the movie, the camera would be on a particular scene for a good 5, 6, 10 seconds. And now it's less than a second. But not only that, but there's so much more activity, such as tickers and banners and emojis popping and everything. And the more and faster the scene changes, the more it trains our brain to hold attention for shorter and shorter period. And I think that's having a big contribution too. So it's easy to assume it's just the way you are, but it's really important to look at what you're consuming.
I totally agree with that too. I have switched like my social media so that it's positive, and I've had to delete a lot of things or things that I assumed were not very healthy for me because I know I can absorb those. And I've had a transformation too with the food I consume and the people I'm around, and but it took a while, and it took some aha moments, some time, a time where you go, I can't do this anymore, and something has to change. So, was there a moment along your journey? Was it gradual, or was there one moment that you said, this is I'm going to make this change?
I wouldn't say it was gradual. And even coming to the decision, once I got there, it wasn't like I was able to shift it right away. But a lot of my shifts started happening when I did start traveling. So when we're living in a particular culture or society, it seems like that's it. Like that's just the way things are. This is how we're supposed to interact and behave. And this is what we can expect from society. But when I left the US and I started going to different countries, different cultures, I saw a vastly different way of how people lived, how people interacted, the things that they did day to day. And it's crazy, but most places don't consume media at the level that we do here. Like it's like here, it's just kind of insane, but it seems normal because everyone's doing it. And it took a little bit to kind of see that, where it's like, wow, well, in a lot of places, people don't even consume media. And the more places I went where they consume less media, the more I noticed how much happier they were, like smiles from ear to ear. And so it took a while to finally start seeing it. And it was great that I was traveling because I had a good distraction, if you will, of like going places, doing things, seeing sights, going on hikes and stuff where I didn't need media. But once I did return, it was very challenging because people here are so set in their ways. They were trying to pull me back into their way. And it was really a tough resistance because I just knew how unhealthy it was, especially for myself. And I can't tell you how many times where people just are always trying to be like, oh, you're too strict. Just watch a movie. Let's hang out. We're all going to go see this movie or go watch this or whatever. And I had to cut a lot of relationships and a lot of ties in order to maintain my resolve. So long story short, it wasn't like an immediate change. And even then, once I made the change, it was I had to put effort in staying in my resolve because people do want to pull you out.
Well, they do. There's always a temptation to be pulled back into that, and yes, I think social media is it's all about excess and frequency and things like that. But what I'm hearing from you is also the importance of travel and seeing other cultures and seeing uh, how people can live healthy, happy lives without the influence of a bad diet or the media, those 2 points you've referenced.
Yeah, I think it's huge that people not just travel outside of their city or state, which is good as well, and it's a good stepping stone, but to step out of the US or the country and experience a different life, different way of thinking and behaving. And what's really interesting is certain cultures, there's this conditioning where don't leave your, immediate vicinity because the world out there is very dangerous. And that's how it was for me initially. At first, I was traveling within the US. I essentially drove to and through every US state. And then I'm like, well, what's next? And it's like travel internationally. But I was terrified because growing up, I was told like, this is a safe place and out there is dangerous. But you'd be surprised. I mean, things are much more welcoming than we would imagine. Even going to developing nations, I thought it would be difficult, but it's not. There's a lot of good infrastructure, and people are very genuinely nice and kind and willing to go out of their way to help you. And I've had amazing stories of people coming to me in my most biggest needs. And a great analogy for this is like fish. Fish, they don't know that they're wet because they're in water their whole life. And that's how it is when we're in a specific environment or specific city or location. We don't know what's out there. But when we can do that, it's like it opens the doors. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with what you're saying. And, what you said too is you don't have to listen to those cues that you've been told and that limiting belief that you can't travel outside of your area. It's not safe. I think people get held back by that. So let's pivot to internal resistance and talk to me more about that.
Yeah. So to understand resistance, it really helps to understand that the part of the brain that creates wants and desires, it works separately than the part that allows us to act on that desire. This is extremely important, so I'm going to say it again. The part of the brain that creates wants works separately from the part that allows us to act on that want. So we have one part of the brain that's creating wants, and it's creating endless wants, one after another. It doesn't check to see if you have the time, energy, or resources to achieve it. It simply creates wants. Then you have the other part that actually gives a green light on the want. And this is the part that checks to see and analyzes if that want is worth going after or safe to do. And what's really important to understand about this is that our brain can both create a want and at the same time hold us back from going after it. And for the longest time, I was like, what the heck? Whoever created humanity, whether it was God, aliens, or evolution, must have been sick and twisted by doing this to us, like creating this burning desire and not allowing us to have it. But it makes sense when you understand it's two different mechanisms in the same brain that's going on. And so the way the process works is one part just creates want. That's all it is. It's just, I call it the wanting mechanism, is just creating endless wants, and that's all its job. And then the other part will evaluate that want using a host of criteria. And if that desire is then not in line with any of the criteria, it will prevent action. And there's many criteria the brain will go through. Some of the more common ones include like beliefs and limiting beliefs, our habits and comfort zones, but they can go quite deep into identity, self-image, core needs, authority issues, and even things like demographics. And so it's really important to understand that both parts can get in the way. our own wants can get in our way and resistance can get in our way. So it's really important for people to know what these parts are, how they work, and how they hold us back. Because only when we understand these things is progress possible. If a person is struggling, it's usually because they don't understand this mechanism. They just think because they want something, they should be able to go after it.
Mm-hmm. Does the imposter syndrome play into any of this?
Imposter syndrome is huge. It's one part of it. So in my journey, I've kind of come up with about 30 different criteria a brain evaluates. And one of them does deal with imposter syndrome. And just to give people a framework for what that is, imposter syndrome is this feeling that a person has that they're not good enough, they don't really know what they're doing, and they will be found out. And the big thing is that they'll be found out, that they don't know what they're doing. And because they're afraid of being found out or exposed, they hold themselves back in trying to protect themselves from being found out. And what's interesting is when we have imposter syndrome, we think that we're the only ones. But the reality is almost everyone has it. Like being an author, I know of a lot of famous authors who every time they write a new book, they think that will be the book where people find out they don't really know what they're talking about and that they were a fraud all along. So we go through that. And it's not something we just get over by doing the thing. Every time we go after it, it can show up. And I truly believe imposter syndrome comes down to this one specific thinking that they have, is that the world that we live in is a pretty complex place. And as we're growing up, we just see people doing things, going to the job, having success and whatnot. And that person feels like they don't get it. They don't really get what's going on. And because they don't get it, they feel like an imposter. Even if they are good at their specific skill or their specific task that they're going after, they just think that they're faking it. And they think everyone has it together. But I want to impart that the more I talk to people, the more I help coach and even meet even successful people, nobody has it figured out. And so if that helps them relieve some of their anxiety that they need to have it figured out before they can have success, just know most of us don't. We're just kind of going through the motions.
That's good to reinforce that. I think there's just so much pressure to succeed and the fear of failure and things like that. I just brought up imposter syndrome because I hear it more and more.
Yeah.
But what are some of those others? You said you had about a list of about 30.
30, yeah.
Can you share a few more?
Oh yeah, for sure. So, like I said, some of the common ones include beliefs, habits, and comfort zones. And I'm just going to quickly summarize this so people have an understanding. If we have a limiting belief that we're not good enough, or something's going to be too hard, or something's not possible, of course, the brain is going to create resistance from keeping us doing it. The other aspect has to do with habits. In order for something to become comfortable and easy, we need habits. We don't realize that a lot of the things that we're doing that we find to be easy and natural at one point wasn't, and after doing it a while, it became easy. And so anytime we do something that we haven't built a habit for, it's really awkward and painful, and that's enough pain that the brain will create resistance. And then the other aspect has to do with comfort zones. Comfort zone is a zone of knowing or familiarity. And what I actually tell people, it's more of a zone of familiarity, because majority of our comfort zones aren't comfortable. It's just a place where we know what to do and how to do it, and there's not a lot of mental strain to learn something new. And so anytime we try to do something that goes outside of our comfort zone, it kind of like raises a red flag. And the brain says, no, we're going to try to bring us back. So those are some of the common ones. Some of the not commonly known ones include a lot of times our brain will stop us from doing something not because of the particular task or activity, but what finishing or completing that task or activity will lead to or bring. And a lot of inspiring authors have this. So many people want to write a book, tell their story, and get their message out into the world. And now with self-publishing becoming easier than ever, I can give someone some really simple tips and tricks to quickly write and publish a book. And many will start, but very few will finish. And why? Because finishing it will mean facing something bigger they're avoiding. When you finish the book, you have to put yourself out there. And when you put yourself out there, you receive feedback and criticism. So it's much easier to procrastinate and sabotage yourself on finishing the book now so you don't face the something bigger later. So a lot of time the resistance is coming up because the brain is processing what might happen when you actually succeed with this thing. And if it believes there might be too much danger or risk, it'll prevent you from doing it now so you don't get there later. And what's really interesting about a lot of these resistance is when resistance comes up, the brain doesn't tell you why, or it doesn't give you a reason. It doesn't say, Susie, this thing you're trying to do, it goes against our habit, so I can't let you do it. All we feel is this inability to take action, or the progress feels slower, or it feels much harder than it really is. And that difficulty is really stemming because our brain is trying to hold us back and slow us down. So that's one. These are some of the reasons, but I can even go into more.
It's just fascinating. As I was listening to you, I remember a person who said they wanted to go back into the workforce, but really didn't. There was a lot of fear, and every time this person would get started on a resume, there was an excuse and a reason not to do it. And after a while, you pick up that and you realize, oh, there's something more to that. That person is so afraid of that next step and leaving that comfort zone into an uncomfortable place. And certainly I could relate to what you were saying in my own coaching business and working with people on lifestyle issues and having to change their thinking on, sleep and what they've been used to, and water consumption and exercise and snacking at night, and lifestyle things that if they made some changes would make a huge difference. But I also was thinking about rewiring the brain. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, rewiring is really important. And I want to just kind of riff on a couple of things you said, because I think it'll be really important for your audience. So this person you mentioned about the resume, he definitely wanted to do it. So the wanting was there, but then resistance was stopping it. And what's really interesting about resistance, as I mentioned, is when it stops you, it doesn't tell you. But what's more is that it uses manipulative tricks to keep forward progress. And there was a manipulative trick that I want to talk about, which I call the bottleneck. And the bottleneck is this small little task that we're not doing that keeps us from doing something bigger. And for him, it was a resume. Before he could go search for a job and find a job, he needs to finish that resume. The resume probably could take a couple hours, a day to do, but as long as he doesn't finish the resume, he can't take the other steps. And resistance loves these little tasks or bottlenecks, because as long as it makes you procrastinate on this little thing, you can't do the bigger stuff. And what I want to say is that all of us have these little things that we're not doing that's keeping us from the bigger things that we want. We want to go work out, and in order to do that, we need to sign up to a gym membership. Signing up takes probably 10, 15 minutes going online, but as long as we don't, we never go to the gym. We may want to start a business, and that requires getting a domain name. We procrastinate on getting that domain or trying to figure out the right domain. And as long as we don't do that, we can't take the next steps. So I want people to be aware of the tricks that resistance uses. Now, in terms of rewiring, rewiring is really important because resistance never gives up. It will fight with your efforts until the day you die. And so we can try to move through resistance by pushing through it. And you hear people talk about, push through your fear and all of that. But resistance will keep fighting back and eventually we get drained. What's better is to rewire our inner stuff so it doesn't create as much resistance so we can move forward, or it creates a natural drive to push through the resistance, and that's a lot easier. Now, there are many ways to do rewiring. We can do things like NLP and breath work and stuff like that. But what I find the easiest and simplest is self-talk. For those who don't know what self-talk is, it's simply statements that you repeat to yourself of the changes that you want to have or have happen. So if a person wants to become a more confident communicator, they would simply repeat, I'm a strong, confident communicator. I easily communicate my needs and wants. Now, it may not seem like repeating such a statement could do much, but it probably is more powerful than you going out and reading books, going to get coaching, doing all sorts of training, because it starts rewiring you from the inside and it naturally creates the outcome you're seeking. And so I have created 2 statements that took me nearly 15 years traveling to over 100 countries to narrow down to, which really speaks to, I think, what most people are seeking. And it rewires them from the inside. Do you think your listeners would like to know what those statements are, Susie? Okay, so it's, I'm a do-it-now person. The first statement is, I'm a do-it-now person. I easily do things now. I easily accomplish my goals right away. And I'm going to quickly break down the psychology of why this is so effective. The first part of the statement, I'm a do-it-now person, it's creating the identity and self-image of that we're a person that does things now. As I mentioned, one of the criteria resistance looks at is our self-image. And if what we're trying to do is not in line with our self-image, the brain will stop progress. And if we can create a self-image or identity that we are someone that does things now, it'll be a lot easier to do things. Now, it's possible to do things, but doing things is like painful and strain. It causes a lot of strain. So that's why I have the second part of the statement, which says I easily do things now, because it conditions the brain to make things easy. So when we are doing things, it's a lot easier. And it's easy to do a lot of things and just spin in circles. So the third part of the statement focuses on I easily accomplish my goals right away. So it trains the brain to make all of our actions towards a specific goal. And even if a person doesn't have a goal, if they repeat that part of the statement, it'll start creating something for them. So I'm a do-it-now person. I easily do things now. I easily accomplish my goals right away. The second part of the statement is I deserve, have permission, and I'm having good things. And I'll break down the psychology. So a lot of why we can't move forward or we have challenges comes down to undeserving. So remember I said there's a lot of criterias. Well, one of the criterias is that a lot of people don't feel deserving of the success. Even if they consciously think they deserve it and they want it, deep down there's a big undeserving that all of the desires are filtering through, and the mind looks at that versus what's in our conscious. And so I deserve changes that at an internal level. The second part is I have permission, and this is really big, Susie. Since we were growing up, we were told what to do, what not to do, when to do it, and all of that. So it conditioned our brain to always be seeking permission to do things. And so most of us are looking for permission to do the thing we want. In fact, we hire coaches and go to these personal development events and seminars essentially for someone to give us permission. And you can give permission to yourself by just saying, I have permission. And the last part, I'm having good things, is to train your brain to be in the motion of just having good things, because we're all seeking good things, and it's different for everybody. But I think the brain knows what it thinks of as good. So if a person can repeat those two statements on a regular basis, I'm a do it now person. I easily do things now. I easily accomplish my goals right away. I deserve, have permission. I'm having good things. It'll actually start changing and updating the rewiring for them to naturally do it. Now, there are some caveats with self-talk. A lot of times when I talk about self-talk, people think of it as writing it down, putting it on a mirror and looking at it, or thinking it. But it's called self-talk, so you actually have to speak it, either out loud or in your head. And that is the most powerful form of it. So if a person can do it, like as soon as they wake up in the morning, right before they're going to bed, in fact, anytime, anywhere, if they're driving, cooking, cleaning, in the shower, I do self-talk all the time.
I think we all do, truthfully. It's not always positive, but we all do self-talk.
More or less, yeah. And if we can change it, I mean, I've written, like I said, I've traveled to over 100 countries. I've written a dozen books. I've created courses, and now I have a healing technique I've developed. All of that came because I was rewiring myself to create forward action. And if I tried to will it, it would have been a lot more difficult. So yeah, that's like one of the easiest ways to rewire.
So as you were talking about it, I was writing it down so that I could speak it afterwards. But I'm one of those who's guilty of putting it on a Post-it note on my bathroom mirror or putting it on my journal so that I see it frequently. Because I think, to me, also frequency is important.
It's all about frequency. The more you repeat it, the better. And it's a reason I kind of added that part when I said it's about speaking, because a lot of people do think of it as seeing or writing, and they're not bad, but speaking is just on another level in terms of effectiveness. And if you do put it on a Post-it and you're speaking it, then now you're getting double the effect. So yeah.
Great. Have you seen people overcome resistance in surprising or unconventional ways?
I have all the time, and it's kind of crazy, but a lot of times it comes once they start repeating the self-talk. And I can even share a text message I recently received from a client about it, if you wouldn't mind. Okay. All right, cool. I'm going to have to pull it up, so just give me 1 second. And so I do work through resistance, and we do uncover the blocks that people have. Though, unfortunately, just by uncovering a block, it doesn't mean things become naturally easy, because we can lose the realization as quickly as we realize them, which is why I give them the self-talk. I create a very specialized self-talk for my client that hits on their exact blocks and exactly where they're trying to go. So one client, I just followed up and I said, "Hey, by the way, how are the self-talk statements coming along?" She responds, "The self-talk has been a game changer. Sorry for the disconnect. I was doing an out-of-town job and was gone all last week. If it weren't for the affirmations, I don't think I would have had the courage to take in such a monumental undertaking. But I did, and I killed it."
Ah, that's great. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. So who's your client? Who would be a really good? What's a good example of someone who, besides everybody, that needs your services? I mean,
So there's a lot of talk about demographics, like who is your age and even age, location, and stuff like that. But my clients are more a particular psychographic, which mean what's going on for them internally. And it's usually people who have tried everything, but nothing has worked, or people who are still stuck, and they're still stuck in old feelings, even though they, have gotten what they wanted. And the reason I'm really effective with it is because, as I mentioned, I have a lot of experience and more personal experience versus what the, you call it, the books would say. And that's because there's a lot of focus in personal development around motivation and inspiration. So they're creating a lot of wants, and they're kind of growing that want and then making it bigger. And that's helpful, but the bigger our wants get, the harder the resistance fights back. And so not a lot of people are talking about the resistance side. So when people have tried everything doesn't work, then, they come to me and we look at this side. And it's only when we can remove this can we make the progress that a person's really looking for.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good point that you said. People who've tried everything and nothing is working and that they're stuck. And that really is the gambit of people. And a lot of people are stuck either it's, a career or a life purpose or where I can think of so many things. And so this.
Yeah, it's like people who did what they were told that they should do, and they're either not getting the success they wanted or they got it, but it didn't change how they feel or how they feel about themselves. So, yeah.
Fascinating. So what's next for you?
Next, so right now, not right now. So, I had written a dozen books. So that was something I had done over the last 15 years. And then based on my travels, my own experience of healing and overcoming my own blocks and challenges, as well as working with others, I came to formulate the topic of internal resistance. So that's what I had been doing for about the last 5 years. And now I have developed a technique that helps people quickly overcome trauma, PTSD, bad breakup, codependency. It's like 2 years of therapy in 2 hours. And it works on the emotional level. So that's what's next for me. I'm moving more towards in that direction, trying to get that out into the world. So
fascinating stuff. So, Kam, what is your SOS? What's 1 or 2 steps that someone is listening or watching this podcast can pick up from you besides reaching out to you or buying one of your books that they can use to take their life to the next level or to perhaps get them unstuck?
So 2 of the SOSs we kind of talked about. 1 is the self-talk. It's the number 1 thing. If a person wants to get started with something, they don't know where to start with, they don't have the money or nothing, whatever. Self-talk is free. This is the number 1 thing. I'm a do-it-now person. I easily do things now. I easily accomplish my goals right away. I deserve, have permission, and am having good things. If a person starts repeating that, that'll be the biggest thing they can do. The second thing is to understand the tricks of resistance. I kind of alluded to one of them, which is a bottleneck. But there's other tricks that come up, and to beware of the tricks. And I tell people that our brain is extremely sly and cunning, and it has all sorts of tricks up its sleeve. So if there's something that they're wanting to do, but they're not able to move forward, whatever that's keeping them is likely a trick of resistance. So know that you're probably in resistance and there's something going on internally that's trying to block you. The third thing I would say is how I help people understand the model of action and moving forward. So some people are they get really excited about a lot of things. They have a desire to do something, and they have a desire to do something else, and they don't really start. Other people are good at starting, but somewhere in the middle, they stop and they can't move forward. Other people are good at sticking with things, but right before the end, or when they're making good progress, they fall off for one reason or another. And lastly, some people are good at getting to the finish, but they're not good at staying with what got them to the finish, so they fall off after the end. And this is where the yo-yo dieting pattern comes up. So we have to take a different approach depending on the step. If a person gets excited about a lot of things but doesn't start, what I recommend for them is to pick one want or one desire and cut out all the rest. No matter what other wants their brain is producing, don't think about, worry about, or consider them until the first is finished. For the people who are good at starting, but they don't make progress, I tell them to use the technique of meditation. So, with meditation, our goal is to either hold something in our mind or to keep our mind clear. But it's impossible to do it forever. We're going to fall off. But the trick isn't to keep yourself from falling off. It's to jump right back in when you do fall off. And that's the recommendation for people who start things but fall off is it's okay if you fall off, just jump right back in. And you'll fall off again, jump back right in until you get to the finish. The people who are good at sticking with it, but then right before the end, they sabotage themselves. It's really important for them to know that, as I mentioned, talking about habits earlier, we need to build muscles for doing things. And we need to build muscles to be able to get to the finish. If we've never finished something, then we need to create the muscle of doing that. And it might take sheer will the first couple times. They might have to put all their focus and energy to make sure they get to the end, regardless of what distraction they're pulling them out, and start building the muscle of finishing things so then they can finish more things, even for the bigger pursuits. And the last one is really important. And that is to know for the people who do get to the success and then they stop doing what got them successful, is success is much harder to keep than to achieve. So as hard as success is to achieve, it's hard, you got to put a lot of effort in. But once we get there, we think it gets easier, but we actually have to put more effort to keep it. And so that's the mindset shift that person needs. So I know it's a long-winded answer on the SOS, but it really depends on where you are. And I think I gave a really good shift in thinking or an activity that they can do to make sure they can get to the next level.
Yeah, that was beautiful. In fact, I was listening to you and thinking about myself and where I am in those too. And I know other people will too. So is there anything else that that you'd like to talk about that we didn't cover?
Yeah, I'll say two things. And this goes back to resistance. I want people to understand wanting doesn't equate to having. Just because you want something doesn't mean you'll take the necessary steps to get it. And this is really important because when we have a want, that want can make us seem like, oh yeah, I can do this. It's going to be easy. I'm going to make it. I'm going to get there. But what they don't realize is that they have this thing called resistance that's going to come up. And so it's important to be prepared for that because you can't fight an enemy or you can't win against an enemy if you go in unprepared. But when you do have a want and a desire and a goal, and you realize there's going to be parts of yourself that are going to get in the way, then you can be prepared for it. And just in the preparation can make you go much further than if you weren't prepared. The second thing is that quote, you are your own worst enemy. Well, I want people to understand that resistance is that enemy that they're talking about. It's that part of us where we kind of make things more harder on ourselves, where we sabotage ourselves and things like that. So I hope our conversation today helps people understand what that quote truly means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a great conversation, Kam. I'm so excited that that you were interested in being on SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. How can people find you?
Very easy. They can go to my website, kamknight.com. My books are there. I have a course on internal resistance called Conquer Internal Resistance. And it's a really deep dive in this topic. We only scratched the surface of all the different criteria the brain uses to decide if it should hold us back. We didn't even touch on the wants. There's, wants is a big thing. And in the course, I talk about over 30 different tricks of resistance that they can get there. And then if somebody wants to work one-on-one, I developed this technique that helps people go into their unconscious. And we work on the resistance and the emotions at the unconscious level. It's actually a pretty wild experience. They get to see all the unconscious patterns that are driving their conscious thoughts and decisions. And I have a free gift for your listeners as well. It's called 5 Ways to End Procrastination and Sabotage. It's from the title, it seems like a simple book, but it goes into the deep psychology of these tricks of resistance. And it helps people understand some of the tricks their brain's playing on them that's holding them back. And they can get that by texting the word flow, FLOW, to 26786.
Repeat that,
26786.
86. Wonderful. Thank you. So Kam, thank you so much for joining me today. I so appreciate your time, and it's been a fascinating conversation about internal resistance. And I hope our paths cross again.
Yes. Thank you very much again for having me. And I really enjoyed talking about this topic. So I hope you and your listeners got a lot of value from it.
Absolutely. I can see your passion, and I certainly know a lot of people who will benefit from this conversation. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Friends, sadly, that's all the time we have today. Thank you for listening or watching SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. And thank you, Kam, for joining me today. This episode was fascinating on internal resistance and all the things that we do to keep us from pushing forward. I understand being stuck, and I understand when we're in a position and we don't know how to move forward. I think all of us have experienced that every so often when we're faced with something new. But we don't need to always listen to it. We can find ways to move past it. We can find a course that Kam has online. And he's offering a free gift for any listener or viewer. You can text FLOW, FLOW, to 26786. And he'll be sure to get you your free gift. So thanks again, Kam, for being a part of this. And remember, you can support this podcast by liking, sharing, and subscribe. You can send me a review or a question you might have, and your question might be answered on a future episode. Follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. And if you'd like to be added to my weekly email newsletter, send me a text or an email. I'm happy to include you. If you're interested in coaching or breathwork sessions, I'm happy to talk with you as well. So until next time, take care, and I hope our paths cross again.